Today in the garage, Amir Bar-Niv from Marvell. Let's go. Welcome to the garage. I'm John Heinlein, Chief Marketing Officer from Sonatus. We hope you've been enjoying Season 2 of the garage, and we've posted episodes from the Consumer Electronics Show 2024. And if you've missed those, please check those out at YouTube or wherever you find your podcasts, and we encourage you to subscribe to our feed to see new episodes when they come. Today, we're excited to welcome our special guest from Marvell, Amir Bar-Niv, who's Vice President of Marketing and Business Strategy for Marvell Automotive. Amir, welcome to the garage.
Thank you, John. Great to be here in this fascinating garage.
Thank you so much. We also have a special guest today, in addition to yourself. Those devoted listeners of our show will have seen a Genesis GV60 here in the garage with us, but today we have something new. Our new special guest is this beautiful Hyundai Ioniq 6, which is one of the over 1 million vehicles today and growing rapidly in production with Sonatus technology. So devoted listeners will see the Ioniq 6 in the episodes to come here in Season 2. But now, Amir, back to you. Tell us a little bit about you and your background and your role at Marvell.
I joined Marvell about 4.5 years ago with the acquisition of Aquantia, where we developed some of the technologies like the multi-gig Ethernet and the bridges that are used today under Marvell portfolio. And my role, as you said, is VP Marketing and the business strategy for the automotive BU in Marvell.
For our listeners who may be less familiar with Marvell, can you tell us a little bit about Marvell and the scope of products it covers and your strategy in automotive?
Marvell is a semiconductor company, exists over 25 years now. They're doing product for data center, enterprise, carrier, and automotive. Specifically for the automotive, we are currently mainly focused on Ethernet products that are used for the in-vehicle network, like switches, PHYs, bridges. Marvell in general, has other IPs and technologies that we are going to leverage for the automotive, later, including compute, security, storage. So it's going to be a wide range of product for automotive, which is a very fast-growing business in Marvell, probably one of the fastest growing right now.
Fantastic. And Marvell's headquarters is just down the road from us. It's just down Highway 237, if you're familiar with Sunnyvale and
correct,
and the area, so in Santa Clara. So before we get into the meat of our discussion, we always like to get to know our guests. And I always like to ask our guests to tell us something interesting about you, about your background, that people might not know about you.
Okay, so to start on my professional background, I'm in the PHY business, I would say, since I started my career. PHY and switches, the communication, that were more in enterprise. And then I moved to automotive about 7 years ago. Personally, when I'm not working, I try to spend a lot of time with my family, my wife and kids. And whenever they don't want to be with me, that's my spare time to do some sport, running, lifting weight, playing basketball, watching the Warriors, although this year it's a heartbreaking experience. But overall, try to fill in my time with doing sports and meeting friends.
That's great. I always like to share some fun fact about me, and I always have to come up with a new fun fact every time. My wife and I are big fitness people, especially runners. And so I've done many half marathons, many 10Ks. They've even done a half Ironman triathlon. So there's my fun fact for the day. So the focus of the Garage podcast and of Sonatus is software-defined vehicles and advanced vehicle technologies. And Sonatus has been working with Marvell for many years now, especially around your switches, as we work to help to develop the infrastructure inside vehicles. So I'd love you to tell us a little bit about your take on vehicle infrastructure and how it's evolving and some of the things you're working on for vehicle infrastructure.
Okay, great. So software-defined vehicle, it's a big thing for us in Marvell. We really believe in this mega trend. The main reason is that all the stakeholders really enjoy this mega trend. To start with the OEM, for them it's a new stream of revenue after they already sold you the car. When you want to download new application over the air, they estimate, by the way, this market to be something in the range of $450 billion per year. and everyone wants to take share of it, okay? For the car owner, it's also a big thing, because now it helps you to maintain the value of the car over time. You buy the car now, and 2 years from now, you download a very important application that, for example, upgrade the car from level 2 to level 3 autonomous car, and all of a sudden you increase the value of your car when you want to sell it. And then also for the carrier provider, it means a lot of bandwidth that will need to be driven to the car and from the car. So everyone enjoyed this mega trend, and this is why we believe this has to happen. And we are working today already on the architectures of this type of platforms for the in-vehicle network to support the software-defined vehicle. Mm-hmm. So it means for us, when we talk on software-defined vehicle and the product, it really means three things for us. Mm-hmm. First, the bandwidth. We need to, now when you talk on this car, it's going to have more cameras, especially when it's, autonomous level, going from level 2, level 3. They need to have more camera, more radar, more LiDAR. The bandwidth in the car going to grow. The backbone is upgrading from gigabit to 10 gigabit and even 25 gigabit. So the switches and the PHYs that we are providing to the market need to support this bandwidth. Then it's security. Security is a very important part of software-defined vehicle, and we need to make sure we have the right security features in our switches and in our PHYs. And then the last one is probably the flexibility to be able to shape the traffic inside the network of the car to serve new application better over time. And that's part of our offering and the capabilities that we have, especially in our switches.
Yeah, that last topic is funny because you and I wrote a blog last year, as you may recall, about this flexibility aspect and the idea of a static vehicle network that you never reconfigure is fundamentally the opposite of what software-defined vehicle needs and wants.
Correct.
And the ability to add these capabilities after shipment is so important.
Yes.
And I think you mentioned cybersecurity, and I think safety is also a critical aspect as well. Time-sensitive networking is integral to this as well.
Absolutely. So start with the safety. Every component that we ship today to the market need to be to this market need to be at least ASIL B. That's the requirement of ISO 262 from 26262 from our customers, in order for them to build a network that eventually will be ASIL D. With regard to timing and quality of service, then TSN is extremely important features. It started at AVB, now it's the TSN standard that also integrate in all our PHYs and switches. And then when we talk on security, then there is a few layers that we are adding in our hardware. Okay, of course, there are other layers that handled by, for example, for what are you doing on the software. But in the hardware, at the minimum, we need the MACsec, that make sure that the links are fully authenticated and data is encrypted whenever it's needed. It's including inside the switches TCAM that are using for real-time filtering, like whitelisting and blacklisting.
Right.
HSM module that is using to generate and manage keys for the network. So all these securities are part of our switches, and we are adding more and more features over time when we come with new generations.
That's fantastic. We kicked off a podcast a few months ago called Driving Innovation, where we dig a little deeper into vehicle technologies. And one of the first episodes we did was on vehicle networks, MACsec, and other things. So if our guests have not seen the Driving Innovation podcast, take a look at that. And we talk a lot about those important technologies you mentioned. That's great. And Sonatus has been developing a product called Sonatus Foundation, which helps to configure vehicle networks and helps our customers to be able to dynamically change vehicle configuration policies, be able to dynamically adjust, for example, cybersecurity. You mentioned whitelisting, blacklisting. Those are critical. As a cybersecurity threat is determined, you may realize, I'm able to block that if I'm able to isolate this port or this service. So it's really important, and we're glad to be partnering with Marvell on this. Yeah. Another important topic that we talked about was the shift from domain controller architecture to zonal architecture. And I think just in general, this consolidation of the vehicle EE architecture, I'd love to get your perspective on how you see the vehicle E architecture evolving?
I think when we think on the evolution of the cars, okay, usually what we show to our customers is that until, I would say, 2015, the car was what called device-centric, meaning you had simple, different systems like GPS, radio, CD. Each one was an individual system. There was no really network in the car between those systems to exchange any data and information.
Right.
From 2015, the market shifted into the domain architecture, where we divided the car to domains. Okay, domains are, for example, ADAS, infotainment, body. Each domain has its own controller or processor, and it was connected to all its agents around the car with different type of networks. The issue here with domain architecture was the cable harness. You had to run cable back and forth in the car.
Especially if the sensor for the body controller is on the other side of the car.
Exactly. And each domain has its own cables and its own network. Okay. So VW give a nice example of the GT, that it's a mid-sized car, and they said that the total length of cable in the car is more than 1.5 kilometer.
It's incredible to think. It's incredible to think about that,
it's
right?
Crazy. It's crazy. It means cost. Okay.
Right.
First of all, to install those cable, it need to be done by human. You can have robot putting the engine, the doors, and everything, but to run those cables, you really need people to do them. So it's very expensive. You need to maintain a big inventory of cables. It's the weight. Yeah. When you're talking on electrical vehicle, then it's the weight of the cable. This is the third heaviest component in the car after the chassis and the engine.
Yeah.
So the industry very quickly identify and understand that this is an issue, and this is when it starts to develop the concept of zonal architecture. Zonal architecture means that you divide the car to zones, okay, geographical zones, like front, center, back. In each zone, you have a switch that aggregate the traffic from the agent of all the domains and convert it to Ethernet. So the backbone of the car is high-speed Ethernet that run on a thin single cable, okay, and that really helped to reduce the total number of cables, the length of the cables in the car. Now, this transition is very important for us, Marvell, as the Ethernet provider, because now the whole backbone, okay, in the car we used to have many different protocols like MOST, FlexRay, CAN, and now everything is moving, especially in the backbone, to be Ethernet.
Right.
And you need to have the switches that can aggregate all this traffic and the PHY that can carry this aggregated data, high-speed aggregated data over these thin Ethernet cables. And this is exactly what Marvell is doing. And these are the products that we are providing in order to serve the current market of domain architecture, but also the future market of zonal architecture that will start pretty soon. We have a survey that I mentioned to you in the past that's showing that by 2026, 80% of the OEM said that they're going to start having zonal architecture, at least on one car model. And by 2029, it will be 96%. Yeah. So it's not a matter of if anymore, it's just a matter of how quick the market is moving into zonal architecture.
Absolutely. I think this zonal shift is a really valuable change that just makes engineering sense. If you think about, if I gave you a blank sheet of paper and I said, draw the architecture of a car, you would never design it the way cars have been done based on what we know today.
Correct.
It was done that way because we had to before. It was done that way. The technology was different. The electronics were different. The network protocols weren't there. But now we have so many more tools at our disposal to design it with not a clean sheet of paper, but maybe a sensible evolution. And it's so incredible. I've heard this statistic before, but third heaviest component in the car, engine, chassis, and wiring. I mean, that probably is incredible for people to think about if they don't know. And so the ability to attack that and reduce that weight, improve manufacturing cost is compelling. I think it also lends itself to this idea of reconfigurability, because if you have this now network that's more flexible, reconfigurable, the ability, and this is actually what we wrote about in our blog last year, the ability to connect, for example, a camera source or some other sensor source to another controller that wasn't previously talking to it, but now there's some new capability, like some security feature or something like that, is now possible.
Yep. And you can do it over the air. So, most of our components, especially the switches, you can upgrade the firmware to those switches, and reshape some of the traffic in them by downloading over-the-air new firmware, okay, that can be authenticated and securely written into external flash. So yeah, this is part of the offering, and this is part of the capability of software-defined vehicle that is based on zonal architecture.
Right. Now, my understanding, and I'd be curious your perspective on this, is that the local communication today is probably based on CAN now, CAN coming to the zonal controller or other things. But my impression is that there's also an evolution. You talked about the high performance backbone of the car. There's also a shift towards, I think, lighter weight, lower bandwidth Ethernet connections to sensors. So for example, cameras used to be connected by different protocols, and now we're potentially moving towards automotive Ethernet. Can you talk about this hybrid Ethernet approach? Do you see that shifting in cars as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I will talk on CAN in a second, because I think that's an interesting topic by itself. But camera today are connected to the SoC with the proprietary technologies. We call them LVDS, like GMSL from Maxim, now ADI, or FPD Link from TI. And the reason for that is that cameras drive uncompressed video that need the bandwidths of few gigabit per second. Ethernet until lately,
and it's constant.
And it's growing.
Right.
It's growing all the time.
Right.
Ethernet until lately, the highest speed that you can serve in the car was gigabit.
Right.
Okay, 1000 base T1. So Ethernet could not serve this market, and that's a reason that OEM went to use those proprietary technology, point-to-point technology. However, Ethernet now has new solution and new PHYs for up to 10 gigabit per second, and soon even 25 gigabit per second T1 on a single pair, full duplex. And with this technology, you can now run the uncompressed video from the camera over Ethernet. So Marvell introduced, we were the first one to introduce to the market a bridge that convert the camera interface, which is MIPI, into Ethernet, 10 gig T1. And then you can connect it either to the zonal switch with very short cable and save the need for long cable with multiple inline connectors all the way to the SoC.
Right.
Or if needed, you can connect it also to the central switch. You have a lot of flexibility once the output of the camera is Ethernet. And in addition, now you can enjoy all the benefits of Ethernet that goes all the way to the camera, okay? Like power over cable, virtualization, okay? You can send multiple streams from the camera to different destinations. You can easily share cameras between domains. Until now, you need to have separate camera for ADAS and for infotainment. That's because it was all point-to-point.
Right.
Now you can, once you have everything in the network, you have a central switch, and you can you decide which camera is going to the ADAS SoC and which cameras are going to the infotainment SoC. This can be done very easily with the Ethernet, and you can dynamically change this also, because it's just changing, the addresses in the switches. So Ethernet has a lot of advantages for cameras over Ethernet and other sensors. By the way, radar and LiDAR are already over Ethernet because they need the lower speed today.
Right.
But really, the vision eventually is Ethernet end-to-end in the car. And going back to your point on CAN,
right.
CAN is used for lower speeds, okay, like actuator, control doors, whatever you need today. There is another version of Ethernet that is the 10 base T1S, which is 10 meg Ethernet that just announced in the market in the last few years, and we are supporting this in our switches that can potentially replace some or eventually maybe all the CAN ports inside the car. So then it will really going to be Ethernet end-to-end for every device in the car.
I think that's very powerful and an exciting thing. And I want to highlight for our listeners who might be thinking, when I think about Ethernet, or maybe the average person, you have this cable, you plug in your computer, it's got 4 twisted pairs, 8 wires inside, some shielding, whatever. But you're also saying that there's an evolution where now with a single twisted pair, we can get very high bandwidth in cars. So think about from a wiring perspective, you talked about the wiring harness.
Right.
Think about the ability to now have a much more streamlined wiring harness, only 2 wires and a very thin cable to handle the traffic of many kinds of things in the car. I think it's very powerful.
Correct.
And then, of course, you add on top of it the ability to manage it with software, manage the protocol configurability you mentioned, share those things appropriately, securely, appropriately to different domains and different subsystems is very powerful.
Correct. Yeah. And I have to say that this is some of the challenges that we had for the automotive, because you need to run the very high-speed Ethernet, like 10 gig and soon 25 gig, on a single pair full duplex under the EMC environment of automotive that we know that it's 10 to 100 times worse than what you see in data center and other industry, okay? Right. But again, Marvell was able to solve all those problems, and our product today can run error-free in this environment of, rush EMC in the automotive, and this is what our customers are adopting, the PHYs and the switches that can drive this speed.
That's great. And it's interesting to hear that you're able to, with your switch, handle these kind of hybrid port types. I think higher speed and lower speed, and you're able to handle that with your switches in a unified way.
Correct. So I think one of the advantage of Marvell in the market today is what we call we are a one-stop shop, meaning we have switches that support all the speeds from 10 megabit to a 10 gigabit, including PCIe ports that are on those switches. And we have all the PHYs that are running from 100 meg, gigabit, 2.5 gig, 5 gig, 10 gigabit. So basically, we have all the components that customer need in order to build today domain architecture platforms, and in the future, this zonal architecture. And we also introduced a new central switch for zonal architecture, called Jasper, and the part number is Q6223, which is a 90 gigahertz or 90 gigabit per second switch that can aggregate. It's more than, I think, twice than anything close to it today in the market. So very high-end and high bandwidth switch that is used as the central switch in the zonal architecture that can aggregate the traffic from all the zones that we were talking about and be able to drive the data securely and safely into the SoCs in the car.
Yeah, because we've been talking so far about the zonal part and this kind of, if you will, quadrant or a section of the car. But you're right, once you have that into those zones, then they need to go centrally to then be rerouted to the other parts of the car they need to go to. So you need both. It's almost like a hierarchical architecture in a way. Major central switch, switches in the zones, and then even potentially other smaller things throughout the vehicle.
Correct. And that's the zonal architecture. That's the promise of the zonal architecture.
Well, this portfolio of products you're talking about sounds incredible. I'm wondering, automotive, is it an important market for Marvell? Are you focusing in that area?
Oh, absolutely. It's all started really when the new CEO of Marvell, Matt Murphy, joined Marvell.
I know Matt's fantastic.
Yeah. So when Matt joined Marvell, Marvell didn't do much in automotive. Marvell came from this world. He understands this world very well. He knew the potential of automotive. And basically, he hired a very talented GM, Will Chu, to start the business in Marvell for the automotive. And I guess everything else is history right now. Okay, this is the fastest growing business in Marvell right now. We are investing heavily in this one, increasing, it's the team size, it's the portfolio of the products, it's the number of customers that we are serving. We're doing very well in the market, okay? I believe that in a couple of years, we will be the biggest semiconductor company for in-vehicle network components. Futures look bright for Marvell in automotive.
Oh, that's fantastic. I know Will Chu really well. We've been working together for years. He spoke about Sonatus last year for CES, so we're got a wonderful relationship with him and yourself. I wonder if we step back, big picture, one of the things that's very important these days for OEMs is differentiating their vehicle design, their vehicle architecture. What are the key things that you think OEMs are focusing on as you talk to customers to differentiate?
So I think the need for differentiation is stronger than ever before, especially when you're talking on an electric vehicle, the EV. This is what we call the battery on wheels, okay, or the skateboard approach. Everyone builds the battery, they have the engines, but there is no much differentiation, okay? So some of them try to differentiate with the range of the car, okay? But that's not really differentiation, because if you want to buy a car that can drive longer with a single charge, you need to pay more, okay? So that's usually, and they're all talking, on anywhere between, 200 mile to 600 mile, in those ranges. Some people start to talk on 1,000 mile, in a few years. The next, I would say, people are talking on acceleration. Can the car get from 0 to 60 miles in 3 seconds or 2 seconds? This is not much of the differentiation. Most of the people don't care about it, okay? Yes. So OEM realized very quickly that the differentiation comes from the electronic and the software inside the car. Okay, the features, the SDV, the software-defined vehicle that we talked about, or for autonomous level in the car. So they are investing a lot in developing a platforms, okay, that has enough component, enough processing capabilities, and enough software in order to create new application to make the car more attractive to this user, okay? Right. And this is a thing where it starts to be very interesting because there is a lot of room for innovation. Right. In these future cars, and OEM cannot always develop all the innovation by themselves because there is so many. If you think on a car owner, okay, a few years ago, the only consideration you had for a car, okay, if you want to buy a car, is the size of the car, the horsepower, the finish, but that's it, the model. Now you need to decide which engine you want to have. Okay, is that going to be combustion, a hybrid, a electric car? Is it going to have, what are the autonomous level? Is it level 1, 2, 2 plus, 3? Is it going to be in the future? Is it going to be SDV car? So there is a lot of permutations for those platforms. And the OEM, in order to serve them, they need to work very closely with the semiconductor companies and the software companies like you in order to be able to answer or to serve all those permutations in the market. So we are engaged with customers at the very early stage, and we are tailoring our products to their future architecture based on their future needs. Okay, so that makes all this journey way more exciting than it was ever before.
Absolutely, and I think ongoing driver engagement you mentioned, I think is something we've been talking about a lot on the podcast. That the ability to have ongoing connection to the driver. After sale, ongoing improvements that the driver feels maybe affinity and real strong connection to their vehicle, like they feel to their phone, they feel like it's really connected to them. I think that's important. Yeah. We also talked before that these products you're designing, and you talked about this incredible roadmap of products, you're not designing these in a vacuum. I mean, you're really getting this feedback directly from OEMs about their requirements. You're hearing this consistent feedback from across the industry?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, that's another interesting transition that you see right now in this industry when OEM take more ownership, okay? Right. Because they want to control their destiny. So if you look, 5-10 years back, OEM were defining the system, okay, the features that they want to have, and then they gave the requirements to the tier 1 that designed the system for them and wrote most of the software, and then the OEM integrated the different system in the car. Now you see that the OEM not only developing the architecture of the system by themselves, of their platform, they're also choosing the component and the vendors, okay, which was all done by the tier 1 previously. And in order to be able to control how the platform will be developed, first of all, between the different tiers and also the transition from one car model to the next one. And you can see a lot of announcement, like VW did with CarAhead and then GM, that they are building very big software teams in order to write the software for those cars. So OEM take ownership on all this and work now directly with the semiconductor guys in order to serve their needs and tailor the product that we are doing for their next level architecture. So we have these discussions left and right with OEM.
That's fantastic. You're really right on the forefront of this evolution of EE architecture, and we're so happy to be partnering with you because you can't have an EE architecture without software to make it work, and we're excited to be working alongside you. Amir, thank you so much for joining us in the garage today. I hope you had fun, and I learned a lot, and I hope our guests learned a lot as well.
Absolutely. It's fun, and good luck. I think you guys are doing great, and it's a pleasure working with you, on our future products.
Thanks so much. Thank you for joining us today on The Garage. We're glad to be back in the garage again, and look for more episodes to come. If you like what you're hearing, please like and subscribe to hear more from us. We'll see you again soon.